guys? I'm Paulie Malignaggi for Paulie TV. Just had some thoughts in my head, guys. I'm sure you guys have all seen this week that I, announced my bare knuckle boxing return to fighting. Obviously, the announcement had been about a week ago, but this week in the UK, we announced my opponent, the fight date. Just want to give everybody a little inside scoop on, if everybody was curious. I know there's a lot of, curiosities about why I'm doing this, and, everybody's thoughts on it. Obviously, it's something that's going to generate a lot of opinions one way or the other. So, I've just going to give everybody a little insight here. A few months ago, I, started getting myself back into a little bit of shape. I started working with Adex clubs. They're sort of like these bowling pin type weights made by Adex. They're mace clubs made by Adex, ADEX. Great company, by the way. They make a really good product. I think they make a modernized version of basically what the mace clubs always were. If you guys are old school wrestling fans, the Iron Sheik used to work out with these kind of clubs, but they look like old school bowling pins back then. The modernized version Adex makes has screw-on pieces of weight that come on and off, so you can adjust the weight and whatnot instead of having to adjust a different pin every time you want to change the weight, right? So more modernized equipment, but the workout is based on motion, it's based on weight, it's based on a combination of things. And started doing that. I started doing conditioning my body because I thought to myself, if I'm going to do this, I can't just jump right back into a camp. One of the problems I had late in my boxing career was to jump into camp while out of shape, and then trying to get in shape. You're in a rush, and you basically end up getting injured as because your body is doesn't jump right back into things the way it used to when you're younger. So it's one of the things I realized in the late stage of my boxing career, and it's one of the reasons I retired. So when this came up to lose some weight, get in shape, one of the reasons I only casually kept in shape is because I knew that if I kept in shape a lot, I would probably be wanting to fight, and that's sort of what happened here, So losing the weight and whatnot. But it wasn't just, it wasn't just a curiosity as to whether I could do this, because obviously the curiosity of whether I could do this or not starts, sort of bothering at you, start scratching at your brain a little bit more and more, especially when you've been a fighter your whole life, you in the past and whatnot, and you've accomplished high level things. But one of the reasons people say, why bare knuckle? Well, the main reason for bare knuckle is because as I can still fight and stay sharp. If you've seen a couple of videos, I've posted a couple of videos of me on the pads this week as well, on the mitts. Some people call them mitts. I only posted them because it's early in my camp, and I'm just kind of promoting it this week, because I've been in England, and I've been, sort of announcing everything. I won't be posting, obviously, me hitting mitts or sparring or anything the rest of camp because, well, you don't want to give away too much of the game plan. But being that it was early in camp, I put up some videos just to show you guys, that I've gotten in shape and I've gotten conditioned already, and my body is skinny enough to be able to throw punches fast and get sharp. And now we're going to work on the actual game plan and whatnot. Shout out to Anthony Crawler and Robbie Davies for helping me out while I spent this week in England promoting the fight, announcing the fight, and also while I was training here. I'll return to the U.S. and hire my training team for the U.S. And, that's the team that will be taking me into the fight. But I really appreciate Crawler and Davies for helping me out this week while in the UK. Why bare knuckle? Bare knuckle is 5 rounds. That's why. That's the main reason. I can box very well, as you guys notice. If you'll notice my pad work, I'm still very sharp, still can throw punches, still very deceptive with my movement, still the IQ still there. But I can do that for a certain amount of rounds. If I get hot and heavy and it starts getting into late rounds, that's where it starts to bother an older fighter. That's where it started to bother me late part of my career. I was always good. I was still a very good fighter early in fights, and even in the late stage of my career, with the exception of obviously the Sean Porter fight. But other than that, I was still very sharp early in fights, even in the late stage of my career. Just as the rounds wore on, the old legs just don't hold you up. So a 5-round fight in bare knuckle, it let me think, what, I can still be sharp in 5-6 rounds. I can do that for 5-6 rounds. I can show you my best in 5-6 rounds, and I don't have to let it get to a late stage fight where where rounds 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 exist, where my legs may betray me, So 5 rounds, 6 rounds, bare knuckle fights, that's what they're scheduled for, and that was the main reason I chose bare knuckle. Now, I chose BKB because mainly it's a company that I've worked with for a lot of years now. They've given me a lot of opportunities, especially when you know, the sending off with Showtime happened and whatnot, there wasn't a lot of companies that wanted to hire me because Showtime not only parted ways with me, but they also kind of tried to cut my reputation off and try to ruin my reputation, so that other companies wouldn't hire me. They knew I was the best analyst in the business, so they figured if they can't have me, nobody else can have me. So they basically ran my name through the mud after that parting of ways, and it worked, you know. So I appreciated companies like ProBox TV, who I still work for, and companies like BKB Bare Knuckle, who I still work for, because they gave me the chance to continue to apply that trade as well. So I figured if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it with a company that deserves it, because I remember what I did with BKFC in the Lobov fight years ago, and it promoted that company to another stratosphere. And that company took off after my fight with Lobov. You know, it was sort of a fledgling, rising bare knuckle company, but after my fight with Lobov, it hit new heights, you know. And but they didn't give me a job after that. Still, it was nice work, you know. I have no qualms about the way I worked with BKFC. I obviously didn't deserve that shit decision, but that wasn't their fault. That was the Florida Commission, who I've since worked with a lot through ProBox TV, and I noticed that all they do is, you know, give fights to guys who play follow the leader. They don't know how to judge fights. They just give guys whoever's coming forward, regardless of whether that pressure is effective or not. It doesn't matter to those judges. So I've since seen that. I've since seen the other A sides even get robbed in Florida Commission fights. It's at least it's genuine. It's not corrupt like in other commissions, but it's just genuine stupidity, unfortunately. You know, so it happened to me in that fight with Lobov, unfortunately, and you know, regardless of whether I had to fight the fight one-handed, I still thought I outboxed him. But regardless, the BKFC experience was fine, but I didn't get a job with them. BKB believed in me. They gave me the job, and they have now this. Just to give you an insight of what BKB is doing, I originally started with BYB. BKB was a bare knuckle company in England. It's actually the oldest one. BKB is actually the original one. And BYB started working with BKB after starting BYB in the U.S. Data 5000, Mike Vasquez, Greg Bloom. They started growing the company. They hired me. They hired Mike Goldberg. They hired Clyde Trejos, Benny Ricardo, a really good analyst team, both in English and Spanish. And when they hired us, they grew the company, started growing the stable, and they ended up working with BKB, and I've actually bought out BKB recently. So, and they kept the BKB name. Why? Because BKB is the older company. So BYB merged into BKB together, and now it's all called BKB. And so I'm fighting with BKB, and I think that this company is now ready to make that move into the next stratosphere, just the way you know, BKFC once did. And I feel like if I'm going to fight, I'm going to fight with them, and this is the moment to do it. Vice TV has done a contract with BKB for American TV rights, but also Telemundo, they're going to have a contract with Telemundo on their Fast channel only for now. That means the app. So Telemundo app is also going to have the fights in Latino in the US as well. And in the UK, they have a contract with TalkSport, which is a big distributor in the UK. Obviously, for my UK fans, you guys know what I'm talking about. So BKB has set the things in motion to grow now to another level. They just need the right fight. They need the right promotion to happen. And that's where I came along. And I think my name can sort of help the way it did at one time at BKFC when I fought with them. I needed a solid opponent. I know everybody and their mothers was calling me out. Some pretty good fighters called me out, I got to admit. You know, there were some good fighters out of respect. But also there was literally guys who stock groceries in your local grocery store, and they're calling me out. You know, they did a couple of bare knuckle fights, and they think they're just going to get a fight with me. I needed a fighter with a big resume, a big reputation, maybe a promotability, also an ability in general to be able to fight. Tyler Goodjohn ticked all those boxes. You know, he coming off a win. He's an ex-BKB world champion back when BKB was on its own. It wasn't tied in with BYB. He is a former pro boxer as well. Very promotable, obviously. He's a little bit wild man, you know, probably more wild than I ever was, even though I had a reputation to be a wild man. And he can fight, coming off a win over a tough fighter named Joe Smith in his last fight. So, you know, I felt like he ticked all the boxes as far as a guy who could, with no disrespect to some other good fighters that did call me out, but as far as a guy who, if I beat him, I could get a title fight. You know, I could at least be worthy of a title fight right after. Instead of using my reputation, my big name to just jump in and try to, you know, cheat my way to a title fight. Because I work ringside. I commentate these fights. I know how hard these guys work. I know how hard they work to try to get the title fights, to try to get the ranking. So I didn't want to just bypass everybody using my big reputation, my big name coming into the sport. So I wanted a tough fight and a good fight against a fighter that would, you know, give me the respect if I was able to get a win over him. And Tyler Goodjohn is no gimme victory. You know, this is going to be a tough fight, but I'm looking forward to the challenge. And if I get a win over Tyler Goodjohn, I think I can move into a title fight. Unlike that punk-ass Conor McGregor, who if you really notice what he's doing, I announced a boxing match, a fight, and all of a sudden he's teasing it. This guy just follows me around ever since I whooped his ass in the gym. I know his fans have to look at it differently, but if you notice, everything I do, this guy's following me around constantly. He's copying what I'm doing. He can't help but continue to pay. When you get your ass whipped the way he got his ass whipped in front of his friends, in front of his team, it was a very traumatizing experience for the guy, I promise you, because this guy would not have this kind of issue still trying to basically ride my coattail all these years later. I announce a boxing match, all of a sudden he's teasing that he's going to come back in BKFC. He's obviously not going to come back in BKFC. He works with BKFC. He's not going to come back doing anything because he doesn't have the balls to fight, especially if he doesn't have the balls to fight bare knuckle. But of course, he's trying to, take some shine and make like he's going to fight and so on and so forth. The guy's a punk. The guy's got no balls, like I said. And at this point, I think most of you guys understand that he's got punk. He's got no balls. But he'll just put on the show. I think he's posted something where he's hitting pads on the beach, making like he's going to come back and fight. He does it for the gram, like I said. At this point, that's all he can do it for, because he's never ain't doing it for real. He never really could do it for real. Moving on. So that's the thing. People ask me, "Oh, Paulie, why are you coming back? You need money. You can't put it away. You can't get out of your head." It's a little bit of everything. I think when people say you need money, I think they look at it from a different perspective than when I say when I need money. Money's gonna help. I'll tell you why. I'm looking to move back to Sicily. Early in my life, I lived in Sicily. I would like to move back to Sicily, spend the rest of my years in Sicily. It's a calmer atmosphere. When we get older, we kind of want to chill out. I love Sicily. I visit every year. I have family there. My father still lives there. I have a lot of family there. I never wanted to move back there when I was younger. I lived there as a child, but I like New York. I like Florida. In my years in the U.S., I have no qualms about it. But at this point, I just want to slow everything down and kind of chill out. And eventually I would like to move back to Sicily. And if I'm going to be able to do that, I got to pay off some things that I've bought in the U.S. So I don't lose them. I got a lot of properties in the U.S. There's mortgages on them. Yes, I can bring in some income. If I pay them down, the income I make off those properties could probably, allow me to live in Sicily pretty calmly and help keep paying those at a normal price, at a normal rate. But I've got to pay some of those things down. Otherwise, I can't really leave the U.S. because I wouldn't be making enough money in Sicily. I still would like to, ideally move back to Sicily and maybe get a commentating job in the U.K. Sky burned me badly after Showtime. Sky had a guy who was at the top of them. I'm not going to mention his name, but he was solely responsible for booting me off Sky after the issue with Showtime happened. He was a big wig. He was one of the big wigs at Sky. But I think that same guy is also a reason Sky has basically lost a lot of luster with boxing. I mean, he kicked out the ring car girls. There's been issues with Sky boxing for a while at this point, So I think that guy running Sky is probably one of the reasons that the Sky boxing brand in general has been tanking a little bit. Now he's kicked out Boxer. I don't know what he's gonna do, honestly. But either way, that was the guy. There was a guy that was a big reason why I didn't go. He was the main reason why I couldn't return to Sky and even work with Boxer after I had done some work with Boxer in the past. I had done some work even with Matchroom when they were at Sky in the past. It was because of this person. But still, there's maybe other opportunities. I know BKB puts a lot of fights on in England. Maybe to be able to commentate there in England while living in Sicily. That's like the same thing as me living in New York or me living in Florida and flying to New York, or me living in New York and flying to Florida, or flying to Vegas from either Florida or New York. In the U.S., I make those trips all the time, for commentating gigs with ProBox TV and whatnot, or even California. So the trip from Sicily to England to work gigs would be ideal. It would be kind of the same thing, and it would be something that is probably comparative to the trips I make in the U.S. when I work commentating jobs in the U.S. as well, So that's that's definitely a main factor as far as money is concerned. It's not money like, oh man, I'm gonna starve. Like if I don't move back to Sicily, it's not gonna be the end of my life. If this doesn't work out fighting and doing this in this way, okay, so I can't move back to Sicily because I gotta keep working in the U.S. and it's not gonna be the end of the world. I really, but it's just. I guess it's just being spoiled. It's what I'd like to do. It's what I'd prefer to do. But if I'm going to do it, I've got to be able to do it this way so that I can do it without really having any headaches in my head, as far as paying down properties and assets / liabilities, depending on how much the debt is. It becomes an asset if the debt is not high, but if the debt is too high, it becomes a liability, right? So I got to pay it off. So that's a little bit of an insight into my personal business, guys. That I usually I probably wouldn't give you, but I don't live a bad life. I've been able to live a fortunate life. But yes, one of the reasons. So basically, the answer to the curiosities about which one is it, you guys, everyone is probably a little bit right. It's probably a little bit that I can't put it down. I can't just forget about fighting altogether, right? The fighter inside you. It's probably a little bit of that. It's a little bit money wise, but I explain the context and why it's money, and also it's a little bit of helping out BKB and hoping to push them, hoping to push their brand, because they did so much for me and they were one of the companies that believed in me, just like ProBox TV was a company that believed in me, and I try to work hard for them as well, and for that reason, to do a fight with BKB, I know would help their brand a lot, and especially if it's promoted right and done right. And I think that's why we had to get a fighter like Tyler Goodjohn, who is a big name in the UK in the bare knuckle scene, and has accomplished a lot, and has a resume and has been a pioneer for this sport. So that's a little bit of insight. You guys check out my Instagram for some footage of me training this week. Like I said, I'm not gonna put up any boxing footage after this week, because the official camp's gonna actually start. But this was just a little bit of a view before things get really sharp in training camp and get really intense in training camp. But I was able to get myself in shape for pre-camp first, and I was really impressed with the way I was able to keep my discipline, because I used to not keep discipline before camp. Only in camp I was disciplined. So as an older fighter, I think you got to make sure that you're disciplined in both outside of camp and inside of camp. So I started months back to see if my body would react well, and now I'm gonna start this training camp, and hopefully everything goes well, man. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you guys got any other questions, I'll try to read them and hopefully try to answer them and whatnot. But that's it, man. Right now I'm in England. I'm gonna commentate BKB 43 tonight. This is the same night as Catterall's fight with Harlem Eubank. Unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to see that. That's why I'm not giving you guys a preview of that, because I'm not gonna be able to watch that fight. I'm gonna be working BKB 43. I'm actually staying at the Bolton Wanderers. For all you football fans, the Bolton Wanderers football stadium at the hotel. I'll give you guys a peek into the stadium right now. That's the Bolton Wanderers Stadium. It used to be called Reebok Stadium. I think Bolton has since gone down, been relegated a couple of divisions. I don't think it's called Reebok Stadium anymore, but this is a hotel, and the stadium's right in the back. It's crazy, right? It's crazy how it works over here. But yeah, our fights are in a little bit. I'm about to get ready, and I'll see you guys later, man. It's Paulie Malignaggi for Paulie TV, and that's a little bit of an insight into my mind going into this fight. My fight, by the way, will be September 6th in Bristol, England. Paulie Malignaggi versus Tyler Goodjohn. September 6th in Bristol, England.